No, he's coming in town in a couple weeks for roller coasters or something.
So if anyone's seen a handheld mic around the vicinity of this room, I'd love it if you could bring it to me. I have little gifts for people who do things. That said, how's everybody doing? Are you awake? Did you have a cup of coffee? Did y'all go to Hacker Karaoke last night? So good morning, everyone. Welcome to BSides Las Vegas Higher Ground. This talk is Bridging the Gap, Training the Next Generation of Cybersecurity Professionals. Just based on the folks in the room, I'm sure some of you are doing the training and some of you are probably going to be receiving it as well. A few announcements before we start. These talks are being streamed live, which means put your cell phones in mute. You shouldn't be recording anything. You don't need to. As a courtesy to the audience, we would like you to turn anything down and not put anything on volume in the room while this is happening. So cell phone set to silent. If you have a question, normally I say use the mic, but as I mentioned, we might be short ones, so get your hollering voices in gear. We're going to try and figure that out during the talk. And just as a reminder, the photo policy strictly prohibits taking pictures of people. That includes the backs of their heads, their shirts, their fingers, their hands, or anything else. So if you're taking pictures of the slides, only the slide, no one else in the shot. And if you're taking pictures of people, you absolutely must ask permission of every single person in the picture, including the folks in the background, just so we're clear on that, okay? So can I get a repeat on that? What's the photo policy?
Don't do it.
Thank you. So the talks are being recorded. You'll be able to actually see those later on YouTube as well when we kind of upload them on our channel. And if you're, at the moment we're fine, but if we get to a point where the room is full, we're going to start turning people away. So if you don't want to be in the talk, please surrender your seat to someone else who does want to be in this talk. This has been a very busy room all week. So once we hit that full point, there's no standing, only sitting. I have other jokes with that one, but I'm going to leave them alone. So today I'm going to introduce our two speakers. What are your names, guys?
Frank and Nick.
Frank and Nick. And they're going to tell you about training the next generation of cybersecurity professionals.
All right, good morning, beautiful people. How's everyone doing? All right. So hopefully everyone's recovered from last night in Hacker Jeopardy. I'm going to do my best to try to stay in one place. I am usually a wanderer around the room. If I start getting too far away from the mic, please say something, because again, I'm usually a wanderer and I like to move around. All right. So today I'm going to talk about some realities here. To some people in this room, they're going to find it as eye-openers. To others, they're going to get something to think about. And for some people, right, it's going to be shocking, and it's probably going to make you very upset with me. All right. First off, let's talk about what's making cybersecurity great. All right. It's a very small community. This is a great conference, right? So first off, let's give a hand to the BSides staff that's working right now. Okay. This was not easy. They're all volunteers. Okay. What else is nice? This job is constantly changing. You will never, ever get bored in this job. There will always be opportunities. There will always be new things to work on. It's constantly evolving, right? Hopefully it's a high demand and that there's always job growth. Just because you start in cybersecurity in one area, 5, 10, 15, or in my case, 30 years ago, doesn't mean you'll be doing the same thing in the next 10 years, all right? Salaries are great. I hope, and this is going to be one of those eye-opening things, if you are trying to get into this career purely for the salary, you are in it for the wrong reason, okay? I understand that maybe makes some people upset, but if you are not in love with the technology, if you are not in love with the hackerish type of mind frame, you need to find a different job career. All right? What does it make to be and get good success? Technical skills, right? We're going to talk about is practical experience and professional networking. Right? But how do you get experience? How do you get your foot in the door? And that's where we have the great disconnect in cybersecurity. All right? First off, for anyone that's looking for a job, you know that the job market is highly competitive. For every one job we post, we stop accepting applications right around 200 to 400 people. And then sometimes that happens within a week, 5 days. We've had 200 applications sometimes within a single day. All right. The other thing that you are a reality or a disconnect in here, I've trained over 1,000 students, right? Either from universities, from colleges, from independent classes. And one of the things they say is, I want to walk in and start making a 6-figure salary. Not going to happen. Okay? Are our salaries higher? Yes. But if you will not start at that, and you will not get it if you don't put the work in. Right? Again, if you are in here purely for the salary, you're in here for the wrong reason. Okay? So what we're going to talk about today is those 4 realities. So the first thing, your first job is going to be a stepping stone, not a summit. You have to start somewhere. Okay? Number 2, and this is going to be the most important one, demonstrative skills, be the stack of certifications, and you can put a comma, a quote behind that, whatever, saying degrees, no matter what kind, it doesn't matter. You have to be able to demonstrate these skills. Soft skills, your force multiplier. This one is going to be a very interesting one because most people that love this hacker's lifestyle are very much introverts. They don't want to talk to people. For those of you that may have not talked to a lot of people here, you're doing the wrong thing. These are your people. Everyone here are introverts. And these are the people to talk about things from. And the best part is you can be as nerdy or as geeked out or as cool as you want about anything, and you'll probably find someone that finds that it's awesome as well. Okay? And then your network is your most valuable asset. So first off, your first job is a stepping stone, not a summit. You are not going to be a pen tester, or very rarely will you be a pen tester on your day 1. Right? Out of the 1,000 or even maybe close to 2,000 students that I've had so far, only 2 have made it to a penetration testing out of the gate. And they lived it. They lived the entire thing. Okay? They worked on Try Hack Me. They worked on Hack the Box. But here's one of the things about it. Who here has done the Try Hack Me or Hack Me Box, whatever? Okay? For those of you that have done it, how many people have done it more than once? The same challenge? 3 times? Okay? Did you write down what you did? Did you demonstrate what you did? Okay? Did you talk about what the possible business impact would be? All right? Because I have a slide later, and I'll talk about it then. Security serves the business. The business, without the business, security won't survive. So we have to be able to show what the impact of the security is. And the biggest challenge that we have is that some ways cybersecurity is like car insurance. Right? I'm assuming that here in Nevada you're required to have car insurance, right? Supposed to. Okay. You pay for it. And what happens hopefully if you get in an accident, the insurance is reacting and doing things that it's supposed to do. But if nothing happens, what goes on? Right? Insurance only takes effect. So if you don't have insurance and you never get into an accident, life goes on. If you have insurance and you never get in an accident, life goes on. In some way, cybersecurity is the same thing. The business, if there are no incidents, and we know that that's never going to happen, but if there are no incidents, right, the business will move on. If we do our job 100% perfectly, the business goes on. And so it's so important for us to try to show what that value is. Don't just say you stopped 100 attacks, or you stopped, or we set up a SOC, or we set this up. You have to show some metrics behind it. You have to be able to show is that, hey, in this penetration test, or in this defense, for those of you that maybe work in a SOC, we blocked this many attacks. And these attacks could have done X type of damage. It's a phishing attack against the CEO or the assistant to the CAO, right? Because everyone wants to do the whole whaling thing where they're targeting the CEO. But do you realize that that assistant to the CEO has almost as much power and access to everything that that CEO has? Right? So what is that damage? What can the CEO do? Right? Okay, so how do we break into that career? Well, that value of that entry-level roles, okay? And learning these entry-level positions, okay? You've got to get hands-on skills, and we're going to talk about that in the next section here, right? Networking through volunteering. How do you volunteer? Well, again, BSides Las Vegas. One of the things that I'm going to assume that from the volunteers here, they are talking and they are meeting everybody. Right? You are going to get more out of a conference sometimes from volunteering and working the conference than actually attending the conference. Right? Strong foundation, right? Solid basis for career growth. And this is where, right, I'm going to push again in the next slide, where you start learning those basics. So when we start talking about things, for example, like how many IPs or addresses are in a /24, right? Can you replicate that? Can you talk about that? And what does it actually mean? Right? And then build credibility, right? Building labs, doing things along those, right? So I want to give an example here, right, for building these foundational growths and things like that. Who here, I'm assuming everyone here is familiar with Uber, right? You're driving down an Uber, and the driver's following a map, and the map says turn here, and the driver turns there, but then you realize, hey, driver, that isn't wrong. That's not the best way to go. I want you to go straight. I want you to take a different route. I happen to know this a little bit better than you. Do you fault that Uber driver? No. Okay, let's back that scenario up a little bit. What would happen if you got into the Uber and the driver doesn't know how to put the car into drive? What do? You get out? Okay. What do you think hiring managers want to do when you present your skills and all you seem to know is be able to recite the book knowledge? We want to get out of that situation as fast as possible. Okay. All right. Let's talk about a little bit of a different situation. Everybody here recognizes that image on the screen, right? It's a CAPTCHA. Okay. What does a CAPTCHA do? How does it work? Anybody want to volunteer? Checks a human. How? Image recognition, right? So a lot of people will say that when they start looking at these entry-level people, they start talking about, well, it's about recognizing the signal light in this case, right? But it's really a grid system. And it has to have a back-end system because that's the interface that you have, right, as a human. And there's got to be a back-end system. And every time it changes and you hit that next image, it moves to a different grid system. How does that sync, right? How does it know out of the 16 slots that it has that you're clicking the right one? Because it doesn't really understand. And most of the time, it doesn't really understand what the image is. All it knows is that I'm going to give you an image, and it should have square, 12, 14, and 8 that you click on as a minimum. And how does that communication work? Because it has to go to some kind of back-end system. And I'm hoping that for those of you that are taking classes or have taken classes, that the professors are actually teaching you these things. And if they are not, I would go back to those professors and I would tell them that's what you need to teach. You need to teach me the job-specific role. Okay? You have a growth trajectory here, right? So those foundational roles. Help desk. A lot of people's like, well, I don't want to work the help desk. Guess what? I started in the help desk. Everybody has to start somewhere. SOC 1, Tier 1 analyst. All right? And one of the things about it in these positions and in the world that we live in today is that we live in a 24 by 7 by 365 world. Right? You are going to have shifts working Saturday night from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And you should embrace those roles. I understand that's not exactly the role, but what I'm saying about, especially with the embracing those job situations, use those to study. Most of the time, that if you can get a role like that, you don't have a whole lot of work to do. You got to stay awake. Don't work to do. Study and get your certificates over and over and over again. Okay? Right? When you are looking for these jobs, make sure you are reading these job descriptions. Right? I don't have my laptop hooked up for internet for obvious reasons. This is a video of the NCIS where they're typing on a single keyboard. I think some people have seen this. It's the dumbest thing. There's actually no reason for me to have that except for just how absurd it is. All right. Okay, so second one, you will feel like an imposter, right? So imposter syndrome, and that's true for even experienced professionals. You don't want to sit there and hype a bunch of bullshit to people. You don't want to say things like that. You don't want to go in there to the senior industry and talk to people like you know what you're talking about, okay? It's okay to say, I don't know, okay? But I am willing to learn, and prove that you're willing to learn. Okay? I'll Google it is almost a worthless statement. What you need to say is, I will Google and then repeat back to what they're talking about. And then read the top 3 as results. Now, of course, AI is changing everything these days. Right? So, which AI do you use? Talk about that. Is it Claude, Gemini? Is it Copilot? Is it something like Perplexity where it's going out through several different AIs? And why are you using it? Right? And then what is your trajectory? Right? Don't compare your day 1 to day 1,000. Right? There's always going to be somebody in the room smarter than you. Right? More experienced than you. Okay? But what you should be doing, and you should be talking to people about, is what you learned in the last 6 months. Right? As long as you are learning and you are growing and you are doing new things. Reality number 2, and this is the most important one. Okay? Build a portfolio. Build something that is documented. I saw one hand go up about the documented items. Okay? How are you going to prove your skills? How are you going to prove what you learned? Are you going to give me a 1-page resume that says, oh, here's what I learned? Because what does that actually tell me? All right? I'm going to use my friend Nick here, who was, by the way, a student of mine. And one of the most impressive things that he did was he wrote up a paper about the lab. And it was like a 20-page paper about the lab and all the different things. And one of the things that ended up that I found was most impressive, he showed me the failures. He showed me the commands that actually ran that did not work. Okay? I ran this nmap command and I got no results back. Great. And then I tried again. And that's more important. Because when we are hiring new people, we know that some of the things aren't going to work, that you're going to make mistakes. Are you going to throw your hands up and you're going to say, oh, well, I give up? Or are you going to try something else? Right. Number 2, and this is absolutely non-negotiable, get your hands dirty. All right? Again, I just ended a 6-year stint with multiple universities, including the University of Las Vegas, University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And I met a lot of students that say, well, we are not going to do the labs, or we're not going to do the labs till we're done with everything, because we just don't have the time. And that is the biggest mistake that you will ever make. And I told that student, and I got in a little trouble with this with human resources. I told him that you've wasted your money. I can recite this, and you can watch me do the lab 1 time, 2 times, 10 times. You will not learn until you get your hands on the keyboards and actually type the commands. And when I was learning this, right, and some of these older people that may be in here supporting me they know that labs were expensive to set up back in the day. Not anymore, right? You have TryHackMe. I can pretty much guarantee you cannot break a TryHackMe lab. Because if it breaks, you just reset it, right? You go back in, you reset it. Try new things. Try crazy things. Well, the lab said try this nmap command, but let's try 5 or 10 different versions, and let's see what happens. Oh, the lab broke. It stopped functioning. Great. Documented what you did to break the lab. All right. I will have to tell you that if you tell me how you broke a TryHackMe lab, I'm going to be more impressed than, I followed all this certifications. All right. Now, to that point, though, make sure you're writing down what you did. And you are showing me what you did. Because documentation is a skill. Writing things down. One thing that I want when I've led lots and lots of teams, I do not want to repeat myself. I do not want to come back and say, hey, by the way, I told you this a week ago. Now I'm having to tell you to do it again. Right? Show that. When you get into an interview, and I would highly encourage that you would practice out here with these people, right? Because there are going to be some experienced people out here. Show them your notes. Show them what you did. They'll be more impressed with that than, hi, how are you doing? Okay? Ask for their help. Okay. Sorry. On your labs, have a home lab. Okay? I know that this is not cheap, and this is not easy. But set up some virtual machines, invest in a decent laptop, and start building some of these labs, okay? But stick to one thing, right? Stick to something like Security Onion. Stick to Splunk. Yeah, go for it.
I wanted to comment. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. So, hi, my name is Nick. Like Frank said, I'm one of his students. I've been in the industry now 4.5 years, and I still work at a relatively entry-level position. I like what I do a lot, but I'm not obviously at where Frank's stature is, so pretty fresh, relatively speaking, out of school. But one thing that he said I wanted to comment on is I think a lot of people think that there's a ton of money required for the home lab thing, but there actually isn't. Granted, I know that's relative, like some people think a lot of money is compared to others, you know what I mean? But I put together a home lab out of used equipment, like thrift store finds. So if you can go to a thrift store and find like $5, $10 computers, you can turn those into home labs, guys. Like, don't let anybody tell you that you need a rack and that you need like a bunch of Dell PowerEdge servers and you need VMware. You don't. You can do it for borderline free. My whole home lab at home is just a host of computers that should have been retired 10 years ago. And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you have a Chromebook, generally crap, but Mr. Chromebox, like those Google search Mr. Chromebox, you can turn Chromebooks into pretty decent Linux boxes pretty cheap.
The secret to what she said is basically anything you put Linux
repeat
on.
What you said. Repeat what you said.
What?
The Mr. Chromebox is what you said. So yeah, Mr. Chromebox. Okay. All right. So building a strong foundation. And this is where, again, I get in trouble at the universities because I think this is a failure. We teach things like DNS, all right? But do they actually do things like teach you what happens when you do BSides Las Vegas? What is that process? What's the first thing that happens? All right? When you type in BSides Las Vegas in your browser, or you type in the URL, DNS is one of the first things that happens, right? And what happens in there, right, to resolve the name? What's your DNS server? Which one are you hitting? Okay. from another networking piece, okay, is what happens when you try to go from a /24 to a /25. Are they teaching that in the class? Are they teaching how routing actually works and what that actually means? And again, if you are taking a class at a university or anywhere else, and they mention these things, and they are not telling you from point A to point B, or more accurately, from point A to point Z, right? Ask them to teach you that. Demand that they teach you this, because that's what we want you to know. We don't need you to recite that a /24 has 256 IP addresses, right? We need you to know is what's happening and how do you get out of there into the next network. Right? With operating systems, if your system's running low, what's the first thing you do? Right? What's the first tool that you have? Okay? If it's Windows, you should be looking at Task Manager. You should be looking at the event logs. If it's Linux, right, you should be looking at top, and you should be looking at var/syslogs. You should be running through these things. Okay? Again, this is what we talk about. We teach this. I mean, I teach the slide. Oh, well, here is how you get into Task Manager. But we don't run that relationship in there. Last and certainly not least is PowerShell and scripting, because everything is automation these days, right? And we teach you, and a lot of people get overwhelmed because it's like, well, how do I write a Python script, or trying to write an entire PowerShell script? And I know vibe coding's changing things since I wrote this slide, but most of it is going to be how do you run the script? You don't have to invent everything from the wheel. In fact, in last 20 years, I've written maybe half a dozen scripts from scratch. Most of the times, I stole them from other places. I copied them from other places. And one of the things that you should know is, how do you recognize a PowerShell script? If you're just looking at some text, do you know how you recognize a PowerShell script? You're looking for a verb-noun combination. Get logs, get dash something. It's always something like that within PowerShell, right? In Python, right, we're running these tools. You have to have a Python interpreter. You have to have Python on the system to run it. Okay. Foundational skills. Okay. I got an eye-opening from this one when I was teaching my vulnerability assessment class. I was talking to my boss, and I said, well, we want to use open source tools because we don't want to sell things, we don't want to become a sales force for any of these people out there. And he goes, that's a mistake. He told me flat out, biggest mistake ever. And I was very confused at first, and after he explained it to me, it was worth it. It made sense. He goes, we run Qualys here. Why wouldn't you teach them Qualys? Why wouldn't you teach them some of the other vulnerability scanners? And one of the things that you can do about it is, I believe, Nessus or Nexpose, they have free classes. So does Qualys. They're self-paced. You can get up on their website, you can register. It is a self-taken test. I don't believe it costs you anything. You can take like 4 or 5 exams, and it won't cost you a penny. But I have been through these exams. If you think that you can take this exam, right, and with an open book and not study, you will fail it, period. And they will make you wait 30 days before you can do it again. You have to study, you have to know the material. And I will have to tell you that if you go into an employer and you say, I'm Qualys certified, that will be more impressive, especially if you can tell them what it took to get there. I had to study for 10 hours, and these were the subjects I had to study. I had to study subnetting. I had to study what a vulnerability was. I understand what a CVE is now. Those are the things that, again, are going to be a lot more impressive, and write it down. Okay? Show them the document. Show them your notes. Okay? Same thing with Splunk. Right? I get very frustrated with Splunk when people teach Splunk. Splunk is probably, for the most part, one of the most popular tools that are out there. Okay? And what do they teach in there? Well, here's the architecture, and here's a forwarder, and here's, here's how the back end works. No, but they never teach things like the Booleans. They never teach the queries. Because as an entry-level person, we're not going to have you configuring forwarders. We're not going to have you configuring the config files. We're going to have you running the system, and we're going to have you running the Booleans. So your basic Booleans, and, or, and not. And there's about a dozen more, and learning what these are. Now, one of the resources that you have for those is actually on the Splunk side, and I believe it's called the boss of the Splunk. Right? I believe it's boss.splunk.com, and you can study and you can run these queries. There is no cost for it. You sign up for it. They won't even spam you. Okay? They won't help you either, but they'll also spam you. But if you need help with these things, I can pretty much guarantee you, right, that if you were to come to some place like this and show them what you're struggling with and that you've gone through the basics of it, somebody here will help you. Just walk up to one of the tables that are out here and say, hey, I'm working on this and I'm having an issue. And if the person doesn't know, they can probably find someone that can. This is a very small community. This is a community that likes to help people, but it's also very small, very self-motivated. Okay. All right, get those hands-on experience again. Capture the flags. Have the write-up. Now, one of the things about the write-ups, and one of my students says, like, well, I'm so worried I might get it wrong. It's okay to get it wrong. Oh, no, I made a mistake in the paper. That's okay. I would rather have you give me a paper that had some inaccurate information into it, because then I can do like the Uber and do the course correction. All right? I had somebody asking me for help, begging me for help on Facebook, and I decided to help him. And he hands me the lab document, and he goes, okay, here you go. And I go, well, where are you at with this? The first step is to build the virtual machines. Do you know how to build a virtual machine? Yes. I haven't done it yet. Well, then what would you like me to do? I'm not sure. That is that blank paper. That is coming to me with nothing. And I told him, very straightforward, don't get a job in cybersecurity. You don't belong here. All right? Internships, volunteering, again. Come to these. I know that BSides only happens once a year, but there are other conferences. Look at those meetups. Look at those other places. Come in. If they come in here, and if you can go into a meetup and say, hey, can I help set up the chairs? Set up the chairs. Help them out. Again, you will build relationships, better relationships, helping people out than you will attending the conference. All right? Try to find your niche. Focus on one thing. Try not to be all over the place. Okay? You know, some people say, well, I want to learn the SOC, and I want to learn digital forensics. Oh, I want to learn threat hunting. But you've got to learn, and you've got to focus on one thing and try to become very good at it. And there are different things. There's the defensive side, right? There's the offensive side, which everybody knows about. But there's also something, if you're good at policy, if you're getting overwhelmed by the technical notes, there are two other career fields. There's governance, risk, and compliance. If you are a good reader, if you like reading, and you can translate stuff, GRC is taking these roles. And, you know, there's the strict governance part with like making sure you fall within your PCI rules, your payment card industry rules. But there's also things like risk management. Are you following the rules of the company? Are you having too much of a risk? And if you're good at talking to people, if you're not that introvert, there's also things like sales engineering to back up the salespeople, right? And sales engineering gets into solutions architecting, building solutions for people. But you have to have that outgoing personality. Right. Reality number 3, soft skills, is your force multiplier. Right? If you can document what you did in a try hack me, and then explain what is going to happen to the business. Right? You have to get into the business and say, okay, well, if I was able to compromise these credentials, then these credentials could do this. All right? However, you must avoid something that we call FUD, right? FUD. And FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay? Don't make it a scare tactic. Okay? Writing. Make sure you are writing down what you have. Right? Every incident, writing is a skill. Can you communicate what you're doing? Okay? And then teamwork. You've got to get along with people. I understand that sometimes in this industry we get into it because we don't like people, but these are your people, right? These are your friends. I hope that everybody here walks away from this conference with at least 2 new friends, right? 2 new contacts out there. And I can guarantee you it's not hard. All right? Communication. All right? Can you explain a vulnerability or security issue at both the technical and non-technical level? All right? And this is where sometimes you can even use AI to help you out. But make sure you understand what AI is telling you. We all know that AI can be wrong. Okay? But help you explain it at a non-technical level, right? Everyone here, I'm assuming, I think it's a safe assumption, has somebody that's non-technical in their life, right? Sister, brother, wife, significant other, friends, etc. Can you explain to them what you did, right? They're not going to probably understand that you ran Nmap, that you ran, Nessus, that you did a Metasploit vulnerability. But what was the actual issue? And the reality number 4, right? Your network is your most valuable assets. Right? Being able to engage and talk to the people. BSides again, but there's also OWASP, right? And that's what the chapter that I run. There's ISSA. There are so many organizations out here, right? There's the DC 703 group as well that's out here, right? If you are not from this area, look for these chapters, either on the OWASP page, on the ISA page, in meetup.com. They're all out there, okay? LinkedIn, right? Everybody here should be connecting with others on LinkedIn. Follow people, look at these presentations, talk to them, right? The people that are up on these stages love talking about their presentations. Right? And I'm not talking about just me. I'm hoping that every presentation you're connecting, you're talking to them, you're telling them about it, right? Ask for help. Hey, I have helped dozens of people say, hey, is it possible for you to get with me and just talk with me for about 15, 30 minutes? I've talked to dozens of people. I said, so, and a couple of them I said, so, by the way, how do I know you? After I got off the Zoom call with them. Oh, you don't. I just saw your name in a presentation. I just saw you on LinkedIn, right? And there are a lot of people that are willing to help you on that and talk to you and mentor it, because everyone that you have in cybersecurity that is great at this job, at one point was a novice and sucked at this job, okay? Right? They know where you're coming from. Nobody came into this business knowing everything. Okay. Again, security ultimately serves the business, right? Understand what the business is. And one of the things about it, when you go in for interviews, okay, and I cannot stress this enough, know what the company does at a high level. Get on their website, set a timer if you have to. Spend 30 minutes minimum reading their webpage, taking notes, knowing what they do. Because I can guarantee you that if you come into an interview with me and you don't know what my company does, you might as well just get up and pack up your shit and leave. Plain and simple. All right? The security serves the business. Learn the business context. All right? Who are their customers? Who are they serving? What are their concerns? And let's do one more reality here. Okay? Turn failure into growth. Okay? Right? You are going to fail. And it's perfectly acceptable to, when you fail at an interview, when you fail at something, walk over to your sofa, face plant into it, and feel sorry for yourself. Next day, get your ass off of that damn sofa and start over. Right? Talk to universities. If the university is not doing the classes that you are, you're not learning, challenge them. All right? All right. Learn your non-technical skills. I'm going to stress this one too. Network properly at a conference or meetup. Okay? I want you to volunteer, show your work, ask help from their challenges. Whatever you do, do not walk up to somebody and say, "Are you hiring?" I don't know about the rest. I know there's some experienced people in the background, but I'm assuming that that's probably very offensive to you. All right? Do not say, "Take me under your wing." If you say that phrase, you might as well just get out of this industry. This is very self-motivated. Okay? Now, I know there's some professionals out there. I want to give you guys some tips to dealing with professionals as well. Do not expose them to bright light, right? Whatever you do, do not get them wet. And whatever you do, do not feed them after midnight. All right. Hopefully somebody recognizes that slide. All right, thank you, everyone. My name is Frank. This is Nick. I'm the president of the Denver OWASP chapter. I am the conference chair for Snowfrock. I have a podcast called Colorado Eco Security. My website, professorfrank.com, professor-frank.com, my GitHub, everything's out there. So again, thank you for everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk and listening. Hopefully I didn't bore anybody too much. So. And if I can ask, thank you for the applause. Let's give another hand for the B-side staff that are here, right? Everybody that's here, they've been busting their ass. Give them a hand. As you walk out and you see them, the staff volunteers, say thank you to them, all right? All right, thank you, everyone.
I have things that, like recommendations or Q&A that I can do if you're okay with that.
Is there any Q&A? Feel free. Well, I know I have to get off the stage, but we'll stay here for Q&A. We have some stickers on the side, some business cards, etc.
We still
Thank
have
you.
time, right? Or quarter two?
No,
We still
you have
have
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
So can I make a couple recommendations? Or
Is there any?
Sorry, were there any questions? Anybody have anything? I had a couple general recommendations I can make really quick. So I am not a reader at all. Like, I had not read a book since I was in school. Somebody recommended a book called The Phoenix Project to me. I picked it up and I read it front to cover like within 2 days. Again, I had not read a book in probably a decade at that point. I highly recommend it. So that's one thing. And then, yeah, make contributions if you can. Like on GitHub, I have my security and digital and forensics reports on there as well. So findings, and then I've stripped any type of sensitive or confidential information, just general findings, and I've put them into reports there. That's a great piece that you can give employers when you're applying. You can say, hey, check out my GitHub. If you're applying for a digital forensics position, you can say, I've already done the job you're hiring. Here's proof of it. I'm not just saying I can do it. I am showing you, and I have done it. So that's a huge one. And then any other contributions to VirusTotal. If you guys aren't familiar with them, I highly recommend becoming familiar with them. But I have tons of findings on there as well, and I've contributed just, again, general malware, all types of things like that, and I've contributed to that, and I also have that on my GitHub and my resume, so I could say, hey, again, here's the job you're asking me to do. I have already done it. So things like that.
Yeah, those demonstratable skills, again, are so important. You've got to show your work, all right? You're not going to succeed if you aren't able to put your hands on the keyboard and get you dirty. And again, there are so many people out there, myself included, that are more than willing to sit down with you and help you out. Yes?
Oh, that works. So like if I'm at my job as like a sysadmin and I set up a VLAN, and like would that be a noticeable thing to be like I turned a flat VLAN into a separated guest versus internal?
If you're converting a flat network into something with segmentation, I absolutely think it's worth to have on your resume. Yes.
Yes.
Any type of demonstratable skills, like he has said a bunch of times, for networking is really fundamental. Like, it's really good stuff. I wouldn't make it your whole resume, but when you say, I know networking, and then the interviewer, whoever's reading it, goes, okay, cool, that doesn't mean anything to me. And then you say, I converted a flat network into a properly segmented, VLAN off network. And if you're in protocol with something, like if you're following a SOC 2 or a PCI or something of that,
Yeah.
put that there too.
So real quick, let me just add to that. So on your VLAN, right? You said you segmented into VLAN.
Yeah.
Why did you do it? What did you separate it into? And what's the function of it? Did you just do it for fun? No. Right? Or did you split it? And what are you getting to? So you got to go from VLAN 1 to VLAN 2. What is required, and is there now a barrier? I mean, what's the difference? What did you gain from it?
Right.
Okay? That's the most important thing, is that I created the 2 VLANs. Now to get from VLAN 1, which has my user network, right, my user segment, to my server segment, they now have to go through a router and a firewall, and I put this in there for this reason. And then right in there, well, your firewall has these logs so that we can react to it. These logs and these rules to block these things. And
Right.
this is what it's going to do. And that is going to be that demonstratable skill.
One problem I find too is you collect all these skills like you just talked about, which are amazing and good, but you can only get so much on a piece of paper before the person reading it does not care either.
Yeah.
So you want to have add on to that. So when I submit my resume, I submit a cover letter and I say why I want to work here, right? But I also say, if you're interested, here's a way to find this. So I actually put a whole, for example, write-up on detail on what I did with that network. Again, strip all the unnecessary information. All the fundamentals are going to be there. That supplementary info can be very helpful. So you have somebody who reads what you said on the resume that's a one-liner, and they go, okay, cool, I actually am interested in this. I need someone networking. They go to that cover letter you submit, and it has, like I said, the GitHub or whatever else, and you can go and read full reports, expand upon what you talked about. Then it's like you're in there.
Yeah.
We have to go.
Real quick, you guys don't think managers are getting checked links? We do. I was manager for a 30-man SOC for 4 years. I've interviewed probably hundreds of people and hired 40 or 50 over those 4 years. We go and we look up. If you give us links, we go and look. If you guys can demonstrate the skill we're talking about, we do go and check. So that I'm just a volunteer.
Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, and but to kind of build on that, you probably looked at some of those links and some of the data was wrong, but
Yes.
that's a stronger thing. It's easier to course correct than it is to come from nothing.
Yes.
Give me a baseline. Tell me where I can hire you on as tier 1 and tier 2. You're going to apply for a tier 1 job, but your job, all your references recommend us to go up a step. Managers will pull you up a step. If they have a tier 2 open and you fit the bill, move into that grade. Managers aren't going to hold you back. It's just not the big
Yeah. I
Thank
mean, it was a long time ago, but even after your experience, right? After I was in this career for about 15 years, I was working and my boss asked me a question. I said, here, let me look it up in my notes. And that got me the promotion to special projects, right? So it continues. It never stops. This is not something you should do once. So learn the skills of documenting. Write things down, right? Whether it's on paper, whether it's electronically or anything else, okay? But make sure you know what it is.
Notes are huge, guys. Seriously, take notes on everything. If you don't have time, do it later when you do. When you get home from work, for example, write down what happened that was significant. You will need all of this stuff later. I guarantee you it'll come up again.
Yep.
Sorry, there's a question in the back. Go ahead.
2 comments. One, you were talking volunteering. Yeah, there's B-sides here, but there's B-sides everywhere.
Yes.
And then the second thing that you're talking a lot on the resumes, I don't know, like you said, is a perfect valid answer. The second thing is, if you put it on your resume, you better be able to talk about it. I have had so many people
Yes.
list certain things, and we start asking them specifics about their resume, and then they can't even talk to it. And that goes downhill super fast.
Yeah, don't get called out for BSing on your resume, guys. It looks really bad.
Yeah, that's that imposter syndrome. So. Yep.
So I just have two questions, kind of, but they're kind of similar. So you talked a lot about like I guess making connections and.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear?
Yeah, that's better.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh yeah, so I just have two questions, but they're pretty similar. But so you were talking a lot about, I guess, trying to make connections here at events, and I was wondering if you have like any, I don't know, like tricks and to get that, like, I guess, to make it easier to do that, or.
It's tough. I'll speak from personal experience as well because I'm pretty introverted, and I think, like Frank said, most of us really are. But if you eventually do get hired somewhere, don't be afraid to ask your employer to send you to conferences. I can't tell you how many I've been to where I got to network on my employer's dime, for example. Do not be afraid to ask for things. And then from there, it's tough to say don't be afraid to talk to people, but you have to just put yourself out there and try it. And not saying it's going to be easy, of course. Sometimes it feels like work, but it becomes a little bit easier. But yeah, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, talk to people. Most of them are going to be just like you, and just like Frank said, find a common interest that you're both really nerdy about, that you love talking about. You'll make a friend, and eventually you might actually meet people who want to hire you too. So.
Yeah. And to kind of build on that, a lot of the B-sides, they happen on Saturdays. They happen on the weekends, right? I mean, I'm in Colorado, and I think all the B-sides happen on either a Friday or a Saturday, right? Give up your Saturday. I guarantee you, it'll be worth it.
As you get older, you'll have less and less time, so stuff like that is really crucial.
Yeah.
So I have another question. Did that answer your question?
For that one, yeah, and then just a quick one. So you're also talking about like, I guess trying to like talk to, say, like a professional for like 10 minutes. How would you go about contacting that? Is it just through like email, then maybe discussing something that you saw about them, or how would you go about that?
So I have people emailing and hitting me up on LinkedIn all the time, and that's great. Give me something specific, though. Don't just say hi or something like that. Give me something back about either my talk or about something you learned or even something random. You know, hey, I saw a presentation at B-Sides. I didn't quite understand what was happening. Could you help me out here? All right.
Specifics help a lot, I agree.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Give something about there because I have people say hello, and I was just like, okay, hi. I don't really know how to answer that outside of that. All right. And they wanted to ask me a lot of questions. Just be very blunt and very upfront with it. Hey, and I mean, it's like, hey, I want you to see my resume. Read through my resume. But be ready for me to be brutally honest. And I am told I got to get off. Thank you.
everybody seated. My name is Jesse Metters. Just kind of your host here from Code Red Partners, one of the sponsors. We're a recruiting firm. And just a couple quick ground rules as we get started with the talk. If you're in the room, make sure you take a seat. Please silence your cell phones so that we don't have any like loud noises going off in the middle to interrupt the speaker. Also, if you want to capture the slides, are you guys going to share the slides?
Yes. Yeah, you don't need
So they're gonna share like probably a QR code or something.
No, we'll have our email addresses.
Email addresses if you want to get all the slides. If you're absolutely like, I've got to take a snap of this, that's the only thing you're allowed to take a picture of. Please do not take pictures of anybody in the room. That's against policy. And I think that's about it. So intro, we've got Austin and EJ. They both come from more of like MDR, MMSP, so they get to see a lot of incidents. They're going to be talking all about the SOC, which is not dead. It's fully alive. There's lots of going on, and I think this is going to be a great training, kind of segueing from what we just heard. So give it up for EJ and Austin.
Can you all hear me? Sometimes I project real loud, so if the microphone gets too loud, just let me know to quiet down. Army background. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about the SOC today and building your own career, understanding your background, so on and so forth. We won't spend too much time on this intro slide, but to talk ourselves about it a little bit, I'm Efren. I go by EJ. I am a 2-time SOC director now and the deputy CISO of our current company. I was never an analyst, but I've managed a ton of analysts, but that's why I have Austin here.
You guys hear me all right? Okay. So yeah, good to be here. Like I said, Austin Phillips. I'm more on the engineering, automation, AI side of the fence, but I spent a lot of time more on the analyst side, growing, as I started my career. I've worked both on the MDR, MSSP side, as well as actual enterprise, working with my internal organizations. So seen a lot, done a few different things. So here to kind of put more of the technical spin on, EJ's more of the high-level executive side, perspective. So
I think between the two of us, we have something like 30-ish years of doing this. So if you want to know why we're up here, that's kind of why, and give you the background. So before we get started, my first question is always, who works in a SOC today, if anyone? All right, cool. So a couple of you. So for those of you that do, some of these slides will obviously definitely come to you guys, but there is slides for everyone who's not been in it either. But the concept around this is just to get you to understand what a SOC does, what are the different levels of the SOC, how to get into it, how to get to that next position, right? For those of you in the audience that are L1s or looking to become an L2 future, it will give you that path and kind of help you understand that, and then what gets you that promotion, right? It's not just given to you, you gotta have to earn it, and we'll talk about some of those things. So with that being said.
Yeah, so, for those of you that are working in a SOC or, even just an internal team, a lot of, as you start in your career in that level 1 analyst and building up, you see that it's a lot of repeated things day in and day out. You're handling the same type of, analysis, the same type of cases, the same type of incidents, open ticket, work a ticket, close a ticket. And it can, it can be a bit of a, stress sometimes, right? But the big thing that, I try to tell people, and they're trying to grow their career, no matter what aspect of security, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to put yourself in positions to where you're going to have opportunities to learn and try new things. Some of the biggest leaps I've made in my career have just been finding opportunities where I can insert myself to grow and try new things, whether that's reaching out to an external team and saying, hey, I'd love to shadow, I'd love to kind of understand, I'd love to learn, what your day looks like. Hey, I don't know how this tool works. Can you kind of walk me through it? And then from there, starting to actually, how can I contribute and support? Your title doesn't, necessarily keep you from being able to kind of find what is your niche, what gets you excited in your role and what you want to do, whether that's analyst work, engineering, GRC, it's all applicable. And waiting for your boss to say, hey, I think you have a great shot to go and do this. is not always going to pan out. More often than not, sometimes your boss is so focused on their job and their day-to-day, they're not really interested in your growth, right? I hate to say it, but sometimes your boss is not looking out for you. They're looking out for themselves. So you need to take that ownership to kind of bring that to what is my goal, what is my vision, and how can I start working avenues and get uncomfortable to work myself into that next step in my plan.
So the path everybody knows and hears about is L1 or junior analyst to regular analyst to senior analyst, right? L1, L2, L3, and then leads. So we're going to talk about all those. The one we won't talk about too much today is lead, but if you start to have that interest, you can talk to us after, and that turns more from the technical side to operations and mentorship, a lot more mentorship and teaching your team. But with that being said, there are other paths, right? To Austin's point, sitting right beside me, there's the engineering team, there's DFIR, digital forensics, incident response type stuff. So don't only think about L1 through L3, and understand all the different facets of it and where you want to go, right? We'll talk later about the path, but knowing those other tracks can help you when you start looking for next positions and growth. So we will be focused on the main path, but don't lose sight that there's those other positions, all right? With that being said, the first thing I want Austin to talk about is kind of like the whole SOC is dead, there will be no analyst things.
So I've heard this a lot, and I think especially as AI is continued to be adopted, we're trying to find more ways to how can we do faster enrichment, how can we automate level 1 triage, how can we do all these things, and all of those pieces are valuable, but it does not change the fact that we still need boots on the ground, especially not just doing some of those basic tasks, right? You want to automate and get through your basic day-to-day repeatable items. But at the end of the day, we still need to own what that AI is doing and be that human in the loop. And that's where that entry-level experience I see is really starting to head over the next few years, is being able to still take the outputs of AI and how it's being adopted as part of the IR SOC workflow, and being able to understand how it came to the decision or the outcome or the output that it provided, and being able to make sure that that actually is accurate and makes sense, and being able to give a strong delivery to whether it's your client or your organization that you're working for. So there's a lot of, I'm not a doomer, there's a lot of doomer talk out there like, oh, it's going to be so, it's even harder now for entry level, and it is to a degree, but I think instead it's finding how can you not just adopt the tool to use in your day-to-day, but how can you make sure that you're helping provide that human in the loop in the analysis? And that's where, I see that level 1, kind of experience moving.
All right, so let's talk about L1s, right? So everything we talk about here, these next few slides, understand it's a baseline. Your companies that you work for now or you go to work for in the future may have some different things or some little changes, but this is the basics of it, right? So in L1, you're drinking from a fire hose, right? It's your first position in the SOC. You are going to be hammering out the queue, learning tickets, learning the environment, all of that stuff. There is no expectation that you're going to know everything from the day you start, right? I know people say, hey, you should have at least 3 to 5 years of working in a SOC. That's not necessarily something I or even Austin believe in. Like, I've hired people who have no experience because they want to learn. So I don't expect you to know anything, but we expect you to be reliable. That doesn't mean coming into work on time or anything like that. Those are your givens. But your reliability means working in the queue, writing everything down. You should fill notebooks worth of notes on cases that you've gone through, things that you've worked in, things that you don't understand or that you want to understand, right? Making sure you start to learn the tools that your current company is working for. After that first 90 to 120 days, thinking of the certifications you want to work with, and just doing all those little things. Learning the judgment calls. As I said, you're not going to know every single case, but you'll start to see patterns and signatures that come often. Understand what a false positive is and what a true positive is in your environment, not just the general definition, but do all of those things. And then just grow fast, right? Like I said, you're going to drink from a fire hose. You're going to be doing a lot. But the goal is to make those mistakes early and then don't make them again. Know what you should know and what you shouldn't know. And then I mentioned, make mistakes. It's fine to make mistakes. Just don't repeat them. Don't make them twice. And ask the questions about why you made those mistakes, right? Your L2s, your L3s, your seniors should be able to help explain why you made that. And it's probably common. Someone's probably done it before. So don't think you're the first person to make that mistake and get down on yourself, right?
That leads into tier 2. Like EJ mentioned, level 1 is tier 1 analyst is all about learning, understanding, gaining that experience, time in seat, understanding what the foundations are. But that tier 2, level 2 analyst, that's where you need to start taking that experience and that context you've seen from that, those incidents you worked as a level 1 analyst, and start applying that to the harder conversations, right? The harder challenges, those harder cases that you're working through. And you are that escalation point going forward to support those level 1s, right? So it's a bit of having the technical capability and being able to support your team and kind of be that subject matter expert, whether it's on a tool or a process or a program. But also, that's where you really start kind of building out that mentorship mentality where you're helping build those level 1 analysts like your level 2s and level 3s help build you up. And being able to start owning that larger investigation, being able to understand, hey, you're starting to see the signal and the noise, right? Being able to say, hey, we need to tune this signal, or we need to create a detection, create some automation to make our analysts' daily lives easier. And then that kind of leads into tier 3, or level 3, which is really at that point you are not just the subject matter expert, you are the escalation point. You are the ones handling the difficult challenges. You're handling, not just how can we help support and work through these challenges, these major incidents, but making sure that you're building up a strong analytic team, whether that's one person that's on your team, 5 people on your team, 10 people on your team. You're helping support them, giving them feedback, and then helping build from a technical perspective the processes around your day-to-day, right? Whether it's working with your engineering teams to help tune, whether it's a super noisy rule, false positives, helping support major, whether it's a major incident response for like a breach, whatever the case may be, you are the technical end-all be-all for that team without going to, like an engineering team or, some kind of advanced, OffSec team, depending on the size of your organization, right? But from a MDR and MSSP perspective, right, where you're working with multiple clients, you also own that customer relationship and the delivery of your product to that client. All of our tier 3s and team leads, these are the guys that are handling those calls, asking the difficult questions, having those hard conversations, and you have to put yourself in the client's perspective and have some empathy too, because more often than not, when they're reaching out to you, it's their worst day of their career. They're in the middle of an incident, they're working through, probably 24 hours without sleep more often than not, depending on the severity of an incident. And so you have to be able to not just, have some empathy and work through that, but also, be able to explain the technical outcomes and what's happening more often than not to people that are not technical. So being able to have those soft skills to be able to kind of translate the technical to an executive, maybe, their legal department, that's where being a real L3 is crucial and where those soft skills really come into play. That being said, that's obviously very heavy on the analyst side of things. For those of you that really love to build and work with new technology and building out, from an architect perspective, maybe the engineering side of the fence is something that interests you. You don't need to be an engineer to start looking at and helping support and building out that engineering work, right? the first step you can do, especially whether you use Claude, ChatGPT, or whatever, is start figuring out maybe there's some opportunities to automate some of your typical day-to-day, right? Your own struggle. And as you figure out what that looks like, working with your technical teams and your engineering teams, say, hey, I built this script, or I have this idea around, a new rule. I see a lot of false positives with this, this client. As you kind of start working through that, you're building up your experience and you're building up your kind of resume, right, to be able to support, to start working towards that engineering role. Obviously, shadowing with those engineers is important as well. And then as you start, building that repository, right, of any detections you worked on, maybe your organization's the detection as code environment, you're able to kind of put your name on something that you're working through. That's all deliverables you can bring to either your next role or your next interview, and it provides that tangible, deliverable that you can give to that interviewer or to that team to move towards that engineering side of the fence.
All right, so the next 4-ish slides are the ones everybody gets really juiced up about. So write your questions down. I promise we'll answer them. We'll make sure we talk a little faster so there's some time at the end. But certs, right? This is the big thing that everybody starts to talk about and get all excited and worry about. But when it comes to being an analyst, use the cert as your power to move forward, but don't use it as your end-all be-all, right? The next few slides, as I said, we'll talk about it. We'll show a path. Afterwards, we can help give a path. I built a site that will give you guys all of that. But make sure when you start looking at certifications, you use it to your advantage within the company that you're currently at, right? I think a big problem people have is they start to get all these certs where they think, okay, at my next job, this will help get me a lot more money, or it'll get me a promotion or something like that. And that's kind of the wrong mentality because it's not helping you grow. What you're going to need to do, and for those of you who heard the presentation previously, but we'll be able to sniff out that stuff when you just have certs and you have no background behind it, right? As I said, I'm not an analyst and I can still sniff it all out. So your goal should be get the certification and study for it, but also use that and apply it to what your current position is. Make sure you pick something that's with the tools that your current job has, right? If you're not a Microsoft shop, don't go and get all these Microsoft certs because it does not benefit you at all in your current job. It will in the future, and I'm not saying never to get them, but make sure you take care of the here and now because that's going to get you noticed, that's going to get you the promotion, and that's also going to get you that next position. Worry about those certs when they're useful to you, but they're not useful in the here and now. Also, make sure at the end, after you take it, which we'll talk about more too, but show the business the value that you're asking them for, right? When you go to take that cert, make sure that when you start asking your company for money, you also explain to them how it's going to help them and prove that. Because it not only helps you, it also helps the analysts after you, right? If you get a cert and then you don't help the company at all, the company may look at the next analyst and be like, well, I'm not going to pay for that for them because the last one didn't help me. So we're all a small community. Use it to help each other and kind of push the whole community forward, right? So this slide has an example path of certs you can take as a SOC analyst, but there is no perfect mountain path, right? Every one of you will have a different path. Every one of you will have different certs that are useful, and not all of these are ones that are going to be screaming off the page when you look at a resume or a cert process. So when you're looking at an L1 or early level, you've got Security Plus and CYSA Plus. Those are kind of like the gold standards, right? You want those on a resume when you're first applying. After you get into a job, you start to look at the other certs. We're a Microsoft shop, so you see the SC900 and SC200 up there. Those are Microsoft-specific certifications. But then you see other ones up there that are not as big of a deal, right? BTL1 is Blue Team Labs. I think they actually changed their name now, but it's still called BTL. But them, CCDL1, those are generic certifications that you do get a cert for. They won't scream off of the page on a resume, but for people that have worked in the industry, they know that that gives you a great baseline. Yeah, so it's a great question. It really depends. It's hard to say, right? So generic timelines in L1 could be an L1 anywhere from a year to 2 years. Average is around 18 months, maybe a little bit more. So there's plenty of time to get those additional certifications, right? That Security Plus, CYSA Plus, they're going to be early, but even CYSA, it takes some experience to get it. But when you're looking at SOC operations where you practice, you're also learning as you're doing these certs, right? So it's not going to be, hey, I'm studying for it now, and in 2 months I'll probably be able to take this test. It all depends on how heavy your Q work is, how much you do it out of hours, right? Because let's be honest, you're not going to be able to study your whole shift most of the time. At least I would hope. I can't pay you for that. But it's generic. So we can talk about it more offline, and we'll talk a little bit. But that's what it kind of looks like.
Yeah, and I'd say too, I think it also depends on what you're, how good of a test taker you are. Are you studying on your weekends, after hours? I've known, practitioners who can bust out a, certification a month. I mean, just pump them out. And more often than not, that to me just seems like you're not really taking in the actual information. You're just going in, taking the test, getting the certification, moving on to the next. So pick your poison. For me personally, I'd say, SC 900 and the SC 200s or, whatever it is applicable, right? That kind of not entry level, but the next step up certification, I'd start looking to do before moving to that tier 2 analyst. But again, I think like EJ said, it definitely depends on the person and how much free time do you have. I have a kid at home and another one on the way, so I don't have as much time to study as I used to. But when I was single, I could spend all of my free time essentially when I'm not working, focusing on training and certifications, lab work, etc.
So on that note too, the SOC Ops section or practice section, it's not really in there. It does fall under depth and visibility, but also don't forget your vendor certs, right? We're talking about Microsoft, but all the other technologies that your company works with, look at those certs, because 95-ish% of the time, they're going to be free because your company's a partner of that, right? So Fortinet, Torque, which is another source, some of these other products, they have free certifications so that you can learn their product and work well with it. Use that to your advantage. You're going to be using it at work anyway. Get the cert, file it away, use the experience, but also now you have it because, like I said, that next company, now you can, if you see on that job description, hey, we're using Torque, and you have that small little piece, that's something you can go in the interview and say, hey, I saw that you guys use this. I've been using it for a year. I've helped build these playbooks. I've helped do all these things, right? And then under leverage, that's your more senior leadership ones, things like that. Everyone knows, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people know of CISSP. That is the technical one, but you also have CISM. You have ITIL, which is less technical, but more around background. You have project management and things like that. So as you get to these higher levels and you start to not be hands-on keyboard as much, in my position or even Austin's position a little bit, you're going to start to want to grow more holistically and be able to do that talking. So some of those other ones help, right? So now that we talked about all those certs, the best way to do it is to ask your company to pay for it, right? So you'll do a couple beforehand, but once you get into a company, the first thing you want to do after you've proven your worth and done a little bit of work and learn the path and learn what your company does is to be able to turn around and talk to your manager, have one-on-ones and say, hey, I want to take X certification. Are you guys willing to pay for it? Give them a business reason, right? Build that case. We use this in our environment, so this Microsoft cert will help us. We have nobody in the company that has it. We have 5-6 people. I can help out in other ways and give that justification. That way, if they're willing to pay for it, great. If not, you can either adjust fire or understand that you're going to pay for it yourself, right? Some of those things you might end up having to do in the future, but at least you can know ahead of time. And like everyone says, if you don't ask, you're never going to know, right? So ask first, see what you can get. Once you get approved for it, let's say they're going to approve you, right? Make sure you schedule that test, and on top of scheduling that test, force yourself a plan, right? There are certifications. I'm even guilty of it. I've paid for a certification and said, I'll schedule it in a little while. Life's busy. and then 6 months later, I haven't studied for it at all, and I haven't scheduled the test, and I lost the money from that test because you only get a year to take it for some of them, whatever the case is. So schedule it right away, put it in your calendar, and then now with all the new apps that can help you build out a timeline, make sure you're studying an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, whatever it is, open the textbook, download an app while you're walking, taking those questions, whatever. Once you complete, we all passed, yay, great job. Make sure, again, to use that, right? Come back to your job and show that value, especially if they paid for it. Do a lunch and learn training with your team, with other people in the company. Explain what it was. Help someone study for it, right? That mentorship. Even if you're an L1, if you do something like that, we take notice of that. And we can say, oh, now that person's showing L2 value because they're mentoring someone else. They're helping improve playbooks, run books. They're documenting new things. They're trying stuff. Even if it's something that ends up, you know, it's a software you use and you look at it and you say, oh, we already do all these things, at least now you understand why you do it. You may not be able to automate, but being able to understand what the automation is helps you. So turn around and use all of those things, right? That's going to help you in that future. So the last piece on the certs and everything like that is to say, I know Austin has a different name for it. I call it my I Love Me book, but keep your records, right? Make yourself an I Love Me book. I am going to semi-date myself, but when I started, it was in a binder, in a folder. Now there's obviously OneDrive and Google Notes and all that stuff. But save everything you do. Save the positive comments you get from customers. Save the projects you lead, the certifications you've passed, even the ones that are not huge. Your issues that you solved, something you built. All of those things can go in that book so that you can prepare to speak to your manager about, hey, hopefully getting a raise or a promotion or just getting more workload that you want outside of the SOC. That next position, that next job, whatever it is, use that I Love Me book to your advantage. And also include the private life things, right? You build a GitHub, you build labs in your environment, you segment things at home. Make sure you do all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I call it a brag book, but really it's the same principle, just applied a little bit differently, right? I use a OneNote for more of the technical wins. I implemented this feature. You worked through this specific incident response. Had this success, and then from a more of like a client feedback or some kind of personal relationship, with kudos, whatever like. I have an inbox folder, right, in my Outlook where I save those emails and those conversations, because at the end of the day, almost everybody, when you get to an enterprise workforce or you're in your role, you're gonna have a yearly review, and it's a lot easier to be able to walk through those items with you and have those documented, those documented actions that you've taken, that you've delivered on. Hey, we set these goals at the beginning of the year. I executed on them. Here are the outputs. Here are the kudos I've received. It makes that conversation not just a lot easier, but it really shows to the leadership team as well that you're motivated and that you have, taken your steps to make sure that you're documenting those items. So it's a great output. Every mentee that I've had that I've mentored over the years, I've really, this is one of the few things I make sure to really instill. It's super important, and it's very positive to show, in those reviews.
Okay.
All right, so I'm in school right now for information security, and I will be taking my CompTIA Security Plus exam here within the next month or so. And I was told about, so for someone like me who's new to the field, how do you tie in your personal projects that you work during your own time into what's listed on this slide?
I didn't hear the last part.
So essentially, the question is, how do you take kind of like those personal things, whether it's working on a lab, et cetera, and translate that to your brag book, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a mixture of, I put, kind of those features I built for my job, but I also put those, those personal things that I've worked through, right? Whether it's, I use Claude to help me build this, this AI-backed app, right? Or I've, installed the Raspberry Pi and worked on my home lab. Whatever it is, again, it's all transferable, whether it's personal or professional. And especially if it's something like, setting up like a GitHub profile and, kind of putting your work on there, I've seen a lot of people who do their brag books exclusively out of GitHub, right, from a personal perspective, right? So that's your, that's your, your kind of own, signature, right, to show your work. So I think, again, it depends on how you want to present that, but all of, I'd say maybe, my one recommendation would be on that path is if you're going into like an interview, for example, try and figure out, from that brag book, what translates and maybe tailor it. Same with a resume, right? You go in, you apply for a role, you might tailor your resume slightly to, kind of be targeted for that specific role. Do the same thing with your brag book.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Put it in your resume and make sure you can speak to it. GitHub is the easiest way to prove that you're doing something, right? If someone has a GitHub in their resume, I will click it. I will look them up. Because it may be private, like mine is private. You can't see what I'm doing, but you see the green commits to see that I'm working in it twice a week, 3 times a week, every day, so on and so forth. So you may not know what I'm doing, but I'm showing that there's something there, and I can speak to what's there. And that's the important piece, right? We're going to move the mic to him. We have 2 slides left that are like kind of wrap-up slides. So if you guys have questions, you can ask. You can raise your hands now because there's 25 minutes or so left. I'd rather answer your questions than our little wrap-up slide. So go ahead. Go crazy.
So this is kind of a 2-part question. So I'm an aspiring level 1 analyst. And so 2-part question. How is AI changing the day-to-day workflow of a level 1? And the second part to that question is, what projects can an aspiring level 1 analyst do that are related to AI? That would show how you're using AI for a SOC.
All right. So I'm going to answer your second part a little bit, but Austin gets really stoked about this. So I'm going to let Austin answer most of this question. But for what can you do, like, to show that you're using AI and things like that, is just build something. You'll see at the end of the presentation, I mentioned I built something. Austin has an app he built. I built 2 apps based off of it. I have little coding experience. AI has built pretty much the whole thing for both of the things that I'm going to say I built. But you still have to know the prompts. You still have to know how to use it. And it's like learning how to speak to Google back in the day when some of our parents or older people don't know how to do that, right? So AI is just the new facet of that. So use that to your advantage. Build something, show it, make an app, make a web page, something that can show that you're using it, but also that you know and understand what you're doing.
So before I answer your question directly, I just want to add on to that and just make a caveat. Don't just go to Claude or whatever and just throw a bunch of prompts at it and then say, yes, this is product ready, and then launch that out in the public web, because you will get hacked. I have 5 years of application security and development experience, so do not just go say, hey, I'm going to go build an app tomorrow. But if you have any questions about that, happy to talk to it, because it's super fun, and I get a lot of joy out of app development. But to answer your question specifically, there's a few different ways that I see AI being translated to that level 1 analyst perspective. And it's not just from like a pure analyst piece, like MDR side either, right? So there are a few applications we personally are, kind of working through, right, in terms of like IP enrichment and that typical, triage. I see AI, and we're working more towards not just doing that enrichment and saving an analyst time and doing that, providing those outputs from an automated and orchestration perspective, like through a SOAR. But also being able to take the context of a client and being able to layer that into that enrichment as well, right? One of the things that we do at Silver Sky is being able to take a client's context environment and being able to, understand, okay, what critical assets do you have? What users do you have, that are your VIPs? What are your natted what are your natted environments? And being able to draw that information in to be able to enrich it in a secure way, and being able to provide that context to an analyst. So that way, when an analyst is receiving a case, all of that's filtered. They don't have to go and do all that work, look through, a client's handling nodes and everything else to kind of understand that. So that's one application. Another is from a threat intelligence perspective. Again, there's obviously like the enrichment of indicators from a case, but also being able to take in different feeds from a, what is happening in the industry, what attacks are we seeing, what new vulnerabilities are out there, and being able to layer that into what's actually applicable to your tech stack, right? What is actually exploitable? What is being exploited in the wild? Being able to have that, I'd say a weighted scale in terms of what needs an immediate attention versus what's something that can probably wait a little bit weak. So that's that's where AI is starting to be applied from that level 1 perspective. I'd say for, and I kind of mentioned this a bit before, just because those pieces are being taken out of that, and that's a lot of what also made a level 1 analyst typically burn out. And that's kind of what I go into my next slide is very easy for burnout. And I've seen a lot of really talented people burn out in this industry because it's just, again, it's the same thing. You might have that occasional case that turns into an incident and everybody gets, super involved and there's a lot happening, but more often than not, you're opening a ticket, you're working the ticket, you're closing the ticket. So to answer your question, there's still, while AI is handling all those things, you need to be able to understand what the actual judgment should be and being able to be that human in the loop to make sure that it's not hallucinating, it's not giving you bad information. AI is getting super powerful with all these new frontier models we're seeing, Fable, Glasswing, etc. But it's still not going to be able to take that full level 1 ownership just yet. I think we're still a few years out before I see that being completely automated. I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, we fully automated your SOC. I'm hesitant to say that I agree with that stake, but where I see value in analysts still being able to bring in is not just being able to apply that judgment and make sure that there's no hallucination, but being able to spot those inconsistencies, help with tuning the agent as well, right? I have a feedback loop with my analyst team going into our engineering team as we're working on that AI enrichment to make sure that we're seeing and tuning things as they come up, whether it's a new technology we ingest or whatever the case may be. So, on this slide, like I mentioned, burnout is real. And I try to make sure to say that make sure that you're taking care of your health from a mental and physical perspective as well. We talk a lot about like the technical side of things and growing your career, but all that's well and good until you're working on 3 different incidents and you're just completely burned out. I know myself, I get super in the weeds and working with my team, and I can work 18, 19 hours and just be exhausted. So make sure you're not losing your goal and your path along the way and getting so bogged down in the day-to-day that you lose track of what you're really trying to accomplish in your career. Set small goals that lead to what that end state looks like for you. And if you're getting stressed and you burn out, just step away from the desk, right? Go for a walk. Mental health, that stress relief is really important. And the journey's long, but the path to get there is important and it's fun, right? So enjoy the moment and take care of yourself.
So the one thing that really helped me, and this is my piece of advice when it comes to what Austin just said too, it doesn't have to be for only a SOC analyst, but we'll word it around that, is those small steps that he's talking about, make sure you have those, right? So I've chosen my path 1, 3, and 5 years out of what I want to do, and that changes a million times in that time, right? But it helps me start to form those goals and ideas. But the other thing is the short term. So we've talked about managers and your boss and doing some things for your company. The most important thing is to get something on the calendar with them to help you get that feedback loop that you need and desire so you can grow. To Austin's point, right? We have meetings with our team every 30 days, 90 days, whatever the case is, however long you can get that meeting on the calendar for standing will help you figure that piece out. So let's say you're starting it today, right? Assess where you are realistically. There is a fundamental difference from probably where you think you are and where you actually are. And good people start to realize that, right? You may think you're this bombshell L1 analyst, but you still have a little bit to learn. Or it might be the other way around, where you have this imposter syndrome where you don't think you're really that good, and then you turn around and you're the person that like everyone's coming to and asking questions, and you have all this skill. So you need to take the time and really understand where you're at. Once you figure that out, start to understand the next step. What's the next skill you want? What's the next role you want? Start to ask that next role what they do that you don't do now. Write those things down and start to grow for that. In the 30 days after that, practice it. Pick the cert you want to take. Pick the course you want to take. Sit and shadow that senior or other person that you're trying to learn from to grow with and help them build something. Fix something at home, set up your GitHub, whatever the case is, do something to continue to show that growth. And then in those last 30, 45 days, whatever it is, prior to your meeting with your manager, start to write down that I love me stuff and start to understand what you've grown on, what you've been able to learn in that time, what you've built for the company. Go in that meeting knowing the feedback you want to give to say, hey, we can improve by doing X, Y, Z. And then also have that thicker skin to turn around and be able to say, like, what can I improve? What have I done well? What have you seen? Because that forces directors, leads, and people to notice you more, right? To Austin's point, we sometimes get so wrapped up in what we're doing. We don't always think about that, but that will force us to take more notice aside from all the things you're currently doing, right? So make sure you build those things, do those things. To the previous presentations point, network everywhere. These presentations you're sitting in are great, but like go and talk to the people in the conference. Come talk to us if you see us around. Like that's going to get you those jobs. I know he said, hey, don't say, do you have a job? But I've got no problem with you coming to me and asking me that. If I say no, I'll also be able to turn around and say, hey, but we've seen X, Y, Z. These are places you can go look at. If you like your current job, but you're going to say, hey, I want a promotion, we can help turn around. Any senior person should be willing to do that. Cybersecurity is not gatekeepers for the most part, right? There are other positions and types of jobs where they don't want to tell you those things. Obviously, you see from the 3 conferences that happened this week, that's not how we are. So use it to your advantage, right? And then the last piece I have is this is not the old days where you stay at a company for 20 plus years. We fully understand that, and everyone should understand that. So the main thing is to know when it's time to leave and go somewhere else and grow, and be willing to actually do it. A lot of people know it, but they sit there because they're scared. You can always make more money. I know that's crazy to say, but you can always make more money. You will always find another job. It takes time, but don't just sit complacent, because that's where you end up not growing, and you end up either hating the career you're in or getting bored and getting stuck in a rut, right? Continue to move forward and know that that's what you need to do. With that being said, that was the last of our slides. We'll open it up for questions. The only comments I want to have, if you want the slides, we're perfectly willing to share them. That's mine and Austin's email addresses there. Please email us. We'll send it out. I've built growth paths for SOC analysts. If your company doesn't have it, I can email you one. It's not the exact one your company uses with all the tools and technologies, but it gives you an idea. Email us. We'll let you know. That website there, darkapex.io/Pathfinder, that's the app I built using Claude. But it will help you, right? Build your certification path. I know all of you have seen Paul Jeremy's site where it shows you all the certification paths. The only thing I didn't love about that one is that it doesn't meet you where you are. It's just a bunch of certs and shows you kind of ideas. This, you can put in your experience level, your current certs, what you do, what your goal is, and it will spit out the top 5 certs that help you get to that point, right? So use it. It's based off of his thing too. I'm not talking bad about him. I think it's great, but it just gives you a little bit more idea on your future there. So with that being said, any questions? He's got a mic for you.
Sorry. What does great look like at each level, at L1, L2, L3? Is it ticket throughput? Is the quality of the report being written? Is it how doing something proactive? Like, what do you look for in high
So this
performers?
is a great question. I'm sure Austin's going to talk to this too. I'm going to give you an answer you're probably going to hate, but I'm going to say it's different at every company, right? Like, we are an MSSP. We have 900 customers. So great for us as an L1 looks like hammering out the queue and making sure that there's as little highs as possible and you're doing it the right way, right? I don't care about quantity as much as quality. I'll let tickets sit in the queue and I'll be able to explain that to the customers if you're taking care of it and doing the right workload when it comes to that. For an L1, the other things are just like I've mentioned before. It's learning, it's growing, it's making mistakes, but learning from the mistakes, and then continuing to push forward.
Yeah, I mean, to dive a little bit deep, I know we talked a bit about it at general terms in each slide, in some of those slides, right? But for each level, there's one consistent thing that I'd say that looks good, right? And again, it's putting yourself in that uncomfortable position and being being comfortable being uncomfortable, and trying to always grow and learn every aspect of your current role in the next role, right? I get a lot more, I respect a lot more some of my younger analysts who don't just come and ask questions, right? But come and say, hey, I'm having this issue. I went and did this, and I looked for this, and I tried to go do this, but this didn't work, and I tried all these different things, but I'm still having an issue with this specific item. Can you kind of help me out with that? I respect that a lot more than somebody just comes to me and says, hey, I have this problem. Help me out, right? So, especially from a level 1 perspective, that to me is what looks good, right? A level 2, you're taking on, again, more technical challenges. You're being that escalation point. You're starting to become a subject matter expert. And you're probably starting to kind of maybe, not delineate, but maybe, kind of doing some of those shouting opportunities outside of your department, right? Or outside of your team. It doesn't have to be a technical thing either. You can go and say, hey, I would love to sit on a couple of our client success meetings, right? And kind of see those client pieces. Maybe even taking on, from a SOC perspective, some of those actual conversations with the clients, right? From a level 3, for me, somebody who looks good in that role is being the owner, right? They own that whole deliverable. Obviously, there's certain points where you have to escalate to senior leadership and work through those challenges, but somebody who is taking on those major incidents, those escalations, is able to talk a customer down, like I said, from probably the worst day in their career, and talk them down from being super heat checked or upset, and having those soft people skills, that really critical, from that role.
2 quick comments before the next question on that, but one is, unfortunately, in the SOC, the concept that still lives a lot is like you can just be head down and hands on keyboard. It depends on the job, right? But something I think is really important is we are mostly introverts, right? The previous guy said that. Even us sitting up here, we are introverts to a point, but it's learning to grow out of that. If you're in an MSSP, even when you're in a SOC in a private company, you're gonna have to talk to your customers. If you're not in an MSP and your SOC is an internal company, you're still talking to the other employees. Those are your customers. So getting used to that and understanding that once you hit a certain point at L1, anything else after that, you're gonna be talking to people, and it's gonna tire you out, and you may wanna sleep afterwards. Like he said, slam your head in the pillow and just not talk to anyone. That's fine, but while you're at work, understand you don't have a choice with that. And then the other thing that Austin mentioned that I wanna echo is, especially for me and most managers, directors, higher levels, you're gonna come with problems. You're also gonna come with questions. Do not come with a question that you don't have at least some idea of a solution, or at least some semblance of saying, hey, this is my question, but I've done X, Y, Z, or I think we can try this. I may say we've tried that before, but at least I know you're trying. And I think that's the important piece, right? That's what great looks like, is continuing to try and raise that bar. Any other questions? We got like 5-ish minutes left.
So in a SOC environment, thanks again for the presentation, it was great. In a SOC environment, how important do you think it is to stay technical before you make that pivot into management at any point in time?
I think you're gonna stay technical until, it depends on your path, to be honest. But like it's all the way through L3 for the most part. You only start moving away from the technical piece when maybe manager hits your title. Our team leads are still pretty technical. They just own more of that customer-facing side, right? So our team leads are still very technical. That's why we don't call them managers, because you want to still be hands-on. It just starts to be the ownership of front end to back end, the whole thing, and you're talking to customers more, but you're also explaining that technical piece in a non-technical way, so you're still doing it.
I'd say really hammer on. It depends on what you want to do. Me, I kept the technical thing all the way through, right? And I love the technical. I think, especially as you get into management and senior leadership, it's a bit of a pendulum. You know, you might focus more on the management side of things for the while, and that's fine, right? You know, growing yourself from that perspective, and then you have to swing back to the technical. And that's another case where, you know, maybe more like if you want to be a CISO one day, it's still important to have the foundations and understand how the technical works to a degree, but you don't need to be super in the weeds. If you want to be a CTO or, you know, some kind of, you know, like senior VP of technical delivery of some kind, right? You got to know all the technical pieces. So your mileage may vary, but I think no matter where you head as you get into those kind of leadership roles, you have to keep it a bit of a pendulum and kind of making sure you're trying to strike a balance of some sort between the two.
Got maybe one or two more before we have to get off the stage, but then you can follow us and keep asking questions. We'll be around.
So I was just wondering, because you talked about the certifications that maybe like you would go through, you're like trying to enter or like become a SOC analyst or trying to go deeper in that path. I was wondering if there's any like external tools or like external learning tools that you would recommend. Like I know like Try Hack Me, for example, has like a SOC path that they have, but anything like that you've seen like, or like maybe some you've talked to likes a lot?
Yeah, so I mentioned it a couple times on that one slide, but we just partnered with Cyber Defenders is the name of the company. That's CCDL1 and CCDL2. Those are paid, but they have a lot of free certification paths that you just create a free account and you can do those things similar to Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, so on and so forth. BTL does the same thing. They have an online piece for that. But it's just searching for a lot of that stuff. You can, like I said, email us or meet us after. We can give you a bunch that do them free. I've been looking at it recently a lot for my team. So there's some levels there. But it's just figuring out what's out there more than anything. There's always going to be some new company that pops up and offers it anyway. So just take advantage of what you can.
Just a quick ad before we have to hop off too, but you know, I think the last presentation did a great job of talking about not just, you know, Try Hack Me and Hack the Box, but some of those foundational skills around like vulnerability scanning, you know, whether it's like Nessus, a lot of free courses out there, understanding from like a network perspective, especially as you kind of hit in that SOC analyst role, having a basic foundation of the networking, you know, labs and frameworks. Absolutely talk to us after. I actually have a study course that kind of walks through both those basics and more of advanced roles, and a lot of free links as well. Happy to connect and get your information. We can send that once we get done with conferences this week.
All right, we're gonna hop off. So I know the next presentation, but if you guys have questions, just meet us on the side or meet us outside. But thanks so much. We appreciate you guys.
non-traditional into cybersecurity. Correct. Kind of talking your stories. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the delay. We had a little technical difficulties, as everybody saw. My name is Jesse Metters, kind of your MC for today. I'm from Code Red Partners, one of the sponsors. We're a recruiting firm for cybersecurity. Just a couple ground rules. If you're coming in the room, make sure you take a seat. Silence your cell phones if you can, please. We have this being live recorded, so we don't want any noises going off during the presentation. And then if you want to capture some of the slides, are you going to have access for the audience to your slides, or they just...
I can make it available.
Okay. Probably the easiest way, if you want to capture some of the slides, feel free to take a picture of the slide. Please don't take pictures of anybody in the room. That's against policy, okay? Other than that, we've got TJ Beckman here, who's going to be talking about kind of the non-traditional route into cybersecurity. Anybody here coming from a non-traditional, non-IT background? Okay. Awesome. You guys are going to love this one. All right. So without further ado, TJ.
Thank you, and I know this is an unusual request, but can I get one person to take a photo of me? It's a request from my wife. If you could get the screen in there as well, that would be appreciated. Go for it. Thank you very much. All right, so as he said, I had a traditional path into cyber. I was a medic for over a decade. I worked in a hospital. After almost 10 years, 6 months of people yelling in my face, telling me what to do sounded like a vacation, so I joined the Army. And guess what? I became a medic. During the training phase, I actually broke my hip. I came back and to training, and COVID became a thing. I came back, started working in the COVID ER, and you know how that was going. Then I made the leap to Amazon as an on-site medical representative, and they paid for my bachelor's in cybersecurity completely free of charge. So there is a small plug in here for that if you are looking for a degree. But the unspoken truth, we are also going to move really fast. I have 20 slides in 20 minutes. So please take pictures for anything that you feel you need to read. LinkedIn actually really does matter. It did actually get me my first job.
I'm going to give you this because you're taller. So you don't have to, yeah.
Thank you. Is that better? Awesome. So there is the open to work feature that you can add to your LinkedIn profile picture. Do actually put a profile picture. Don't do an AI generated one. Make it actually of you, but make it the best one you can do. Use clear IT hashtags and other things like that so people can find you easily. So, applicant tracking systems are the bane of my existence and pretty much everybody else in here probably. There is a way to get around it. Applicant tracking systems are AIs that cannot read tables. Do not use tables in your resume unless you're using one of the tools that I'm going to show you later. But look at jobscan.io. They will ask you for the job posting. You take your resume, you put it in to compare, and it will give you a percentage match. If you use an app like Types, you can actually hide those keywords they're looking for in the metadata and not have it in your resume, but it'll still increase your score, which means your resume will actually get to a human. So, these are just a few points from my resume. And like I said, we're going to move very quickly. You're going to see an actual slide of my resume here shortly. But one of the big things to do is make your bullet points related to IT, no matter how you have to do it. So here is my resume. That table is actually not ATS breaking because it is simple certification, date, certification, date. The ATS reads from left to right. So if you have words in a column that take more than one row, it's going to break the ATS and it's not going to be able to parse your application. Now, I'm going to show you what types does to make this. It is not your traditional what you see is what you get. It's not Word. So it can hide all of your stuff in there without having you do like 0.6 font or something to hide it to make it illegible. Memorable cover letter. I will tell you this. This did not actually get me my job. I did this most recently, but here is an example of one that is actually going to get you recognized. So this is a true story. Day one of triage in one of my hospitals, I triaged a 25-year-old male with chest pain. We did all the things, EKG, blood work, all of it. We got him back to the room. I took off the blood pressure cuff and saw blood on it. I said, what the heck? Take off your shirt. Why didn't you tell me you were stabbed in the chest? Okay, so day one of being a cybersecurity administrator at local county, they gave me access to the east-west traffic analyzer, and I noticed we were under attack. Turns out all the traffic was coming from a box called SC Securin, which was the people they contracted to do the pen test. So I didn't freak out, but I was like, is today the day? I went to my boss, and he said, yes. And then I also found out they didn't have the COOP, DRP, anything in policy outside of like password policies and stuff like that. So I just got to work, right? So all of these are examples of war stories. You may not have an actual war story, but take something like this, spin it on its head into a way that will actually make it IT relevant. The previous presenters were talking about soft skills. I didn't know how to talk to people. I failed out of medic school originally because I didn't know how to talk to people. What did I do? I worked in an ER for 10 years and it forced me to learn how to talk to people. Put yourself outside of your comfort zone. Ask the questions. Who here knows what it actually takes to become an expert in something?
Approximately 10,000 hours.
That's one method. Or, does anyone else know the other one? Okay, so it actually requires three things. It requires instant gratification, so you need to know whether you have succeeded or failed instantly. It requires doing it over and over and over, and it requires pushing your boundaries. For example, I am an expert at starting IVs. Why? Because every single time I started an IV, I found one that I was 100% certain I could get, and I didn't go for it. I kept looking for something that I was about 70% sure I could find, and you find that 70% migrates to smaller and smaller and smaller and harder and harder and harder very quickly. Because A, I knew instantly whether I got it or not. B, I did it a lot. And C, I pushed my boundaries to the point where the guy that they would call in the hospital when they couldn't get an IV would call me when he couldn't get it. IT is very much the same. It's just silicon instead of humans, right? So find that thing that you can say I am an expert in. It can be anything. Networking is absolutely your greatest asset. That link at the bottom there, github.com, is actually a link to all of the tech Slack channels broken down by state, by country, by region of the US. Get involved in it. Plug yourself in. I had one day where we went to a library event. we'll get to that in just a second. But mostly, try and find your local community and get plugged in with your local community. So back to the library event, it was absolutely packed. I don't normally hate crowds, but today I just couldn't handle it. So I went over to the back wall, hung out, ran into one of my old coworkers from the hospital. We got and started talking. Mentioned that I was now in cyber and looking for my first job. The guy, also on the back wall, said, "Hey, have you heard of the New Mexico Technology Council? They meet one Thursday a month. You should go to one of their meetings." I did. Instantly, they welcomed me. One of them actually became my mentor to the point where he pulled me aside and actually did practice interviews. He helped me get my resume somewhere that was a lot better than it was. They helped me so much, so quickly, and all I had to do was ask, right? They have a monthly meeting at a local brewery, and they bought my food once a month, and I just got to hang out with other cyber professionals from the region. If you don't have something like that in your region, start one, right? It may not be big immediately, but it will eventually pay dividends. They didn't get me my first job, but they did get me my second job, paying more than double what I made at the previous job. The absolute number one thing that actually got me the job, the first job, was practical experience. I know that's really hard to say when I tell you I don't have any IT background, but this came in the form of labs. It came in the form of me setting up a home lab and just messing around with Active Directory, Linux, you name it, I tried it. Hack the box, all of that, I tried all the things. When they asked me in my interview questions about Active Directory and such, got it. Yes, absolutely. Sorry about that. Anyway, after I got the job, I asked them what set me apart, and they said, when we asked you questions about Active Directory and GPOs and stuff like that, you actually had an answer. Not all of them were accurate, but you had an answer. And knowing how to find the correct answer is a lot more important than having the correct answer immediately in an interview. I don't know, I've never dealt with that, but I would go here to look for that, or I would ask your network analyst, whatever, right? Come up with an answer that you know you would actually follow through with, too. So, certifications, degrees, boot camps, which ones should you do? Degrees and boot camps are the more expensive route, typically, but they will kind of like drinking through a fire hose sometimes for the boot camps, but they show that you have a standardized set of knowledge. They are extremely helpful in getting certain jobs, like working for the DoD, meeting the 8570 requirements, which is Security Plus or higher. So certifications are great, and especially if you're trying to get into the DoD, are an absolute must. But if you're trying to get into private sector, honestly, if you have the knowledge, you don't really need the cert. Again, I said quick pivot for Amazon Career Choice. They currently, last I checked, only require you working for them for 90 days before you are eligible for the program. And as long as you are still an employee, even if you are on leave, you are still eligible for the program. When I started the program, it was a 1-year requirement. A month later, they turned it to 90 days. So, you know, timing sometimes sucks. Does anybody here actually have a security clearance? No? Cool. If you have it, great. It is a great way to get into those jobs. If you don't, still look at the clearance jobs website and all of those. Not every single one of the things will say must have active secret clearance, active top secret. Apply for those. Because once you get that certification, or that clearance, you can hop from job to job that requires that clearance very easily. One of the things that the VA actually taught me, applying for your first job is in itself a full-time job. If you are not doing it 40 hours a week, you are not doing enough. Okay? So there's the ideal candidate myth, where everything on that wish list is an absolute must. If you are missing 1 year of experience or something like that, don't even bother. That is the actual ideal candidate. Apply anyway. Worst thing they're going to do is not call you back. All right? So tailor your resume to the actual job listing. Make sure you hit the keywords that they have in there. Typical keywords are things like EMAS or NIST 853, Revision B, or anything like that. Look for something that is going to be an easily identifiable item from the job posting and try and match it in your resume. It doesn't necessarily have to be in human readable format, but make sure you match it in your resume. We'll talk about imposter syndrome here in a second, but the shotgun approach no longer works. Spreading your identical resume to 500 different job postings probably not going to work, because most places now use the applicant tracking system, AI, to try and filter their matches down so humans no longer have to read 5,000 resumes. Now they have maybe 100, right? If you're not one of those top 100, no human is ever going to see your resume. In that same line, keep meticulous records. Every job application that I created, I had a copy of the date, the resume that I submitted with the name of the company, so that when I actually had an interview with them, I could pull up that resume and speak to that resume. A lot of places, if you're going for an in-person interview, will give you a copy of the resume you used so you can speak to that, but it's much better to bring your own if you have it. The hidden keywords strategy, like I said, I will show you what that looks like here in just a minute, but I have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try and breeze through these a little bit more. So, the interview, has anyone heard of the STAR method? Cool. There are certain jobs like Amazon that absolutely require you use the STAR method. If they don't require it, don't limit yourself to it. The point is to try and build a connection with them and make them understand what benefit you will bring to the team because of your experience, not your lack of IT experience. So for me, it was the triage, the keeping calm under pressure, all of those soft skills that a lot of IT personnel don't have. And translate your past. Be honest about the technical gaps, but be confident and explain how you plan to close those gaps. Also, it took 7 months of me working full-time, applying, without a job. 3 months in, my wife lost her job with a new baby. He was 2 months old when she lost her job. So yeah, it took a lot of stress and a lot of time, but I was able to land that job, and I actually did well. But within 6 months, I found that second job that paid almost double what I was making at the first job. And that one was because of my connections. For the imposter syndrome, you got the job, you feel like you know nothing. Truth is, no one expects you to, right? They don't. Mine, I hit the ground running. They said, you're the cyber administrator, figure it out, right? They didn't expect me to have everything done by the end of the day, but by the end of the day, I set up their know-before phishing simulation campaigns and all of that stuff. I found the attack, started working with their network admin to get the firewall a little bit more secure, all that sort of stuff. But when I left, they said, we didn't know what we needed in a cyber administrator until we actually hired you. We didn't realize how much we needed the go-getter. The person who says, we don't have this, I'm going to make it. So resourcefulness is a lot more intense in getting you the job. So during the interview, you can just be upfront with them. What is your IT experience? I notice your resume doesn't have any. Well, I don't have any, but I spent a lot of time in my labs and blah, 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 right? Try and swing the question into a way that will fit what they're looking for without directly contradicting the question. Can we come back to this in just a minute? Sorry. So, if anyone is a vet and you want vet-specific resources, please come find me. The job market is absolutely a grind trying to get that first job. But now we're actually in for the questions. If we could get a mic to him, it'd be a lot easier to have everyone else hear what he's asking. No? All right.
If you guys have a question, feel free, and then I'll try to repeat it if I need to.
I will actually show you that here in just a minute.
We got 1 minute left to wrap up.
Awesome. What was your question? Sorry. You, yeah.
How about we do this since we're at time? Do you want us to step aside and we can have them talk to you about the
Yeah.
questions on the presentation?
Absolutely. I will take 2 seconds to actually show you what types looks like. So this is my cover letter in Typest. Over here on the left, you have the actual content that you type in. I will be honest, I used AI to do it all, right? I gave it the bulk of the content, it created all the stuff, but if you look at the keywords here and stuff like that, these are completely hidden in the PDF output, but the metadata is still there. That is where you hide all of the keywords that don't actually fit your resume. We are at time, so I am going to step aside, and feel free to come talk to me later if you have any further questions.
just get the ball rolling for this next talk. I'm from Code Red Partners. We're one of the sponsors for this Higher Ground event. So thank you guys for joining. As you're coming in, make sure you take a seat in the room. We are going to be live recording this behind you, so if you guys have cell phones, please silence those so that we don't have any noises going off in the middle of the presentation. And then also, if you do want to take pictures of her slides, feel free, but just don't take pictures of anybody in the room because that goes against policy, okay? That's pretty much it. We've got Kim here, who is coming from a very non-traditional background into cybersecurity, into the world of cyber audit and IT audit. Is that kind of where you're spending some of your time? Okay. So anybody coming from a non-traditional background or either trying to get into? It's okay. All right. Awesome. Well, you should enjoy this talk. So you guys give a round welcome to Kim.
Hello, everyone. As stated, I'm Kim, and I do cybersecurity auditing for Google. Also, I don't want to step on y'all's toes, but we are hiring. So if anyone's looking to get into technical auditing, we have some open headcount. Let's see. Any familiarity with audit? Yes, no? Like being audited. I'll give a brief description. And so we're the group that is looking at kind of like risk across the company. And what my job looks like, since I'm at a larger company, I don't have to do as much of the checkbox auditing. I get some more of the like fun auditing, which is looking at risk overall. Risk meaning like a situation involving exposure to danger. Like I've audited data centers, and so we look at like the risk being a malicious person steals a hard drive, and so we'll go and check the control and make sure that it's operating properly by, validating that all of the servers have cage doors or something like that. Any Marvel fans in here? Yes! Oh my gosh, that's the most I've ever gotten when giving this talk. So there's familiarity with the Watchers, because I like to compare us to the Watchers. Except we do actually report our findings. It's kind of cool. We get to like talk to the VPs and the board and talk about what cybersecurity risk looks like across the company and how we're doing. Wow, I'm so excited there were so many people that understood that reference, because otherwise it's very odd in the slide. So for me, growing up, I was a person who was very adventurous and curious, but didn't have that much. I wasn't interacting with computers that much, aside from video games when my brothers would let me play on their computers. Mostly I was climbing things, so I did actually do a lot of red teaming, I'm realizing now, because I got really into trespassing and climbing buildings. Don't have any pictures of it, no evidence, but that was probably like my first foray into security, was just trying to get on top of as many buildings as possible. When I was a kid, I really wanted to do something like meteorology or be a spy or work in the space industry, but the only visibility that I had to women working was nurse and teacher. So my brain assumed those were the options for me, and I selected music teacher, and that's what I went to school for. And I very quickly failed out of the music conservatory. I thought maybe I could do music performance. My cello teacher said, no, teaching's the way. You're not quite good enough for music performance. Turns out I wasn't good enough for teaching either. So I had to get a major really quickly so that I could graduate. I selected communications because it was the major I could get in the shortest amount of time. So finished my college degree with communications, but then had a very, very low GPA and could not find a job anywhere. I did try to be a music teacher overseas, was rejected from that as well, and then finally got a job at a tech startup. We didn't have health insurance. I didn't have any stake in the company. They were sold a couple times, which was unfortunate for me. Didn't have a 401k, was just kind of grinding, doing customer service for a couple years. I slowly started to work my way into the engineering department, made some friends there, got into software testing, really, really enjoyed that. While I was software testing, somebody taught me how to code, so I learned how to code. And then, anyone listen to Darknet Diaries? Cool, yeah, I got really into Darknet Diaries, which is just a cybersecurity podcast, and realized we were not testing for any security at my company. And so I said, why don't we start testing some of these things? Taught myself some basic exploits like cross-site scripting and SQL injection, found enough vulnerabilities that I got us budget for Burp Suite, so I started doing Burp Suite scans. And then I started pouring into the community. So I started giving talks, joining meetup groups, joining like the software testing community. which got me enough visibility that I was recruited to do technical auditing at Google on the technical infrastructure and cloud team. I will say I slipped through like a crack in the door because for a very brief period they were hiring software testers to do audit work, and they brought in I think like 6 of us, and then only 2 of us are still there. So the experiment didn't go well enough, but it worked for me. I snuck in through the crack in the door before they slammed it shut again. And then, so that's where I'm at now is technical auditing. I think I gave this talk 2 years ago, so it's kind of a surprise about what will come next. I really wanted to move into cybersecurity still. My manager allowed me to do a lot of different projects that were related to security. And then I also just pestered any security person I could find to give me extra work until I moved into the cybersecurity auditing position, which is where I'm at now. That being said, so I've been in this position for about 2 years. I would love to do engineering work. So that I've been trying to do for years and years and have been interviewing like crazy. Is anyone looking for roles right now? It's really bad right now. So for the past 2 years, I have applied for security engineering roles, interviewed, and been rejected. And then rejected, wasn't allowed to apply that time. And then applied again in 2025, failed the interviews. And then switched to SWE, tried applying for SWE roles, did much better at the interviews. For the imposter syndrome question earlier, I've realized that when you want something really badly, it's like people can smell it on you. Like you have to kind of calm down. So I didn't care that much about software engineering. The interviews are harder. They were much easier for me because I just didn't care. But I don't know how to not care about things. So if anyone does, let me know. And then this year, finally interviewed. I tried the not caring thing. I practiced it for a year and got close enough where I can now pass the security engineering interviews, but still looking for team match. So that's where I'm at now. Actually, I'm going out of order, but any questions? No? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So I'm sure you had moments of imposter syndrome throughout your journey, but what were some of the ways you approached it?
The only way that's worked for me, I play a lot of D&D, and I realized finally, I was like, I just gotta, like my character is a security engineer, and I built like my character sheet, and I'm like, I'm role playing. That's the only way I can get through like an interview, and that's like the imposter syndrome in the interview. That's the only way I can get through it. I think everyone, not everyone deserves to be here, but like there is a place for everyone, and you just kind of have to fake it. Who said lying earlier? Maybe they left. About how to be an expert. Yeah, it's like you just have to be kind of comfortable with lying, but that's what's worked for me.
Yeah, or I feel like different people like have different ways to overcome it. Like for example, like as you can probably see, I'm really into sports, so especially when it comes to like cybersecurity, you want to tie that into like playing defense. So figuring out like what you can do to make sure your opponent doesn't score on you and whatnot. So I feel like, yeah, that could be, I might be going a little off topic, but I feel like that's probably like one of my ways to overcome imposter syndrome too, especially if you're in a cybersecurity interview, because you just want to like be applying those principles like on a daily basis, even when you're not sitting in front of your computer.
Yeah. If there are any other questions, otherwise I'll go on to some of my like, cool. Okay. So some of the big moments that felt like career-changing moments, one was moving into software testing, so getting into like that first technical role. That part can be tough. And doing that, it was learning to code, learning to kind of like be bold, and then picking up computer science basics. For those of you that come from like a non-technical computer science background, there's a lot of missing knowledge. Like you have a lot of hands-on knowledge from working the job, but there's like these little things. My first day as a software tester, I was hanging out with some of the people in the role, and I said, what language is our system in? Even though I'd been there for 3 years. There's just questions you forget to ask. The next pivotal moment was stepping into security and also developing a passion. So stepping into something where I actually love it, and I think that helped me drive forwards. And also starting to give talks. I have some really good advice from someone named Juno who gives talks at conferences a good bit. But she said you don't have to you don't have to be a security expert to start giving talks at a security conference, and it's great advice. I think her first talk was on game theory and how that applies to security. So highly recommend giving talks, and it helps with visibility as well. And then the last one, similar to the previous one, was joining the community. So I joined Slack channels, contributed to a book, started speaking, not with enough authority to do so, but just started doing it. And it's helped me make a lot of friends and build the network that got me to the next level. Unsolicited advice. I highly recommend building your online persona. This is what helped me get recruited. So the most important thing is to make sure that your kind of like personality comes through, because people are going to hire you. The first thing most people are thinking is whether or not I like this person. And then the second thing is, are they qualified to do the job? Depending on, I don't know what order it is, but that's what I have seen. I was at my first job and my manager turned to me with a resume and said, "You went to school with this person, what do you think?" And I kind of made a face, and he crumbled up the resume and threw it in the trash. So I learned not to make that mistake again and like let people have a chance. But making sure that your personality is coming through in your online persona is very important. Oh, I'm going too fast. The next is to water your passions. Like I said, I like D&D. I also like camping. I like playing games. Before I moved into the engineering department, I was already friends with the whole engineering team because we had game nights and we played D&D together. So starting to build relationships based on shared hobbies is really important for mobility and moving around in your career. Because when I did do the transition, it was a smooth transition because we'd already been spending a lot of time together. And then second to last is to invest in your network. I think of networking in two different ways. I have kind of my fun network, which is anytime I meet someone that I really enjoy talking with, or if I hear a talk that I really like, I will connect with that person. If we have shared hobbies, I'll connect with that person. And those are not necessarily someone that's a manager or in a role that I want to get into or in the same fields. Like Andrea's on the front row, she's in threat intelligence. Our fields overlap, but it may not necessarily benefit my career. And then I also have my strategic network. And these are relationships that I have with managers and roles that I want to get into, with directors at other companies that I might want to work for someday. These relationships aren't necessarily based on shared interests. They are based on, can this person help me get ahead? This is also, I meet regularly with the managers of other teams at my company to make sure that they know who I am, they know what work I'm doing, and that's helped me with promotions. The last thing I'll say, and this is an important one that I have learned recently, is you have to rest. I'm someone that will throw myself into a goal until I complete it. But right now, getting roles in this industry is really, really hard. And if you go like balls to the wall, nonstop, you are going to break. I think the most pivotal thing in finally passing those technical interviews for me was taking a summer where I just rested. I did things that were only fun for me. I still prepped for interviews, but it was 15 minutes a day. It wasn't my whole weekend while my poor husband was watching our children. So those are kind of the main pieces of advice. And that's it. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah.
And that you manage with your husband and your kids, how do you get that work-life balance with applying to jobs, taking time for yourself, and getting work done and networking with people?
Yeah, that's tough. You can't do it all. There is no such thing. So what I do, I have a checklist because I'm very ADHD, and I have, for my work checklist, my work tasks, my career tasks, things that'll get me ahead, and then family and personal. And I'll make sure that I'm checking off boxes in each category every day. And sometimes it's like, I'll miss a category one day and get to it the next, but it's it's just like, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to hit everything in every category, but I'm going to try and hit every category each day. Yeah.
So like when you started, pretty much you started as a like tech, right? Like kind of helping with tech.
Support desk.
So there you go. Yeah. So like what kind of skills did you have to like have previously in order to start there?
None.
Because you went from music to tech, right? I'm going from logistics, supply chain to cybersecurity. So I've done supply chain for over 20 years, but I feel like, what am I doing? Like, how am I gonna implement this with this? But I love computers, it's a passion. I feel like I'm there and like everybody else knows what they're doing. Kind of like when you did with the, you know, your other engineers, right? And I'm like lost, like, what is this? So like, it's kind of hard, but I really wanna find a point where I can start.
Yeah, we should talk after. But communication skills were the big thing. That was it. Like for support is like communication skills, but also supply chain is huge in cybersecurity. Like those skills are.
And see, and that's the
super
thing though.
transferable.
I had over 20 years hands-on. I've done everything you can imagine in a warehouse, from yard driving the truck to loading, unloading, receiving, transportation, clerk, shipping. I mean, I even done like recycling. Like I drive every piece of equipment. I've done so many things except tech.
Yeah, we'll chat after this. All right. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. All right, thank you, everyone.
Kim, are you going to be down here for a couple minutes if they want to talk to you? Okay, great. Thanks all.
Bye.